Hi, today we're talking about factoring perfect square trinomials, okay? So a binomial, that means it has two terms. If you square it, we can talk about squaring a binomial that has a plus in the middle, and we can also talk about squaring a binomial with a minus in the middle, okay? And if we do that, we're going to get a special kind of trinomial, which is called a perfect square trinomial. So x plus 3 squared, what you're really doing is x plus 3 times x plus 3. So we're going to use FOIL like we always do, okay? So our first, we're going to x times x is x squared. Our outer, x times 3 is 3x. Our inner, 3 times x is 3x. And our last would be 9. So then we add them together and we get this, okay? So basically what you're going to get is your first term squared, your last term squared, and in the middle you're going to get your two terms times each other times 2. That'll be your middle term, okay? If you have a binomial with a minus in the middle, then you're going to have a minus here, okay? That's the only difference between the two binomials, okay? So let's look at this one now. Once again, we are using FOIL. So our first term's 2n times 2n, we get 4n squared. Outer terms, -1 times 2n, we get minus 2n. And here, -1 times 2n, we get minus 2n. -1 times -1, we get plus 1. Then we're going to combine our like terms. Okay, so once again, for our original term, we just squared this one. We squared the last one. Then we multiplied them together. So we got -2n and multiplied that times 2. That'll get us this. So it's a pattern. Let's try this one. Okay, when we FOIL it, 7x times 7x. Outer. Inner. And last. Okay, we're going to combine our like terms. Okay. So once we know that's what happens, if we can identify these, it makes it much easier to factor a trinomial. So let's look at that now. So to determine if you have a perfect square trinomial, see if your first and your last terms are perfect squares. That's your first clue. Okay, also your middle term needs to be 2 times, that's what twice means, 2 times, sorry, that's a 2, the product of one factor from the first term and one factor from the last term. Okay, so let's look at this. We've got 25y squared plus 30y plus 9. So first I'm going to look at these and say, are these perfect squares? Well, yeah, 5y, that's a perfect, 5y times 5y would make it this 25y squared, so that's a perfect square. 9, 3 times 3 makes 9, so that's a perfect square. Now if I take 3 and 5y and multiply them together, I get 15y. If I multiply 15y times 2, I get 30y. So this does fit all of my criteria for a perfect square trinomial. Because I know that now, it's really pretty easy to factor it. Because I know that I'm going to have 5y here and a 5y here. I know I'm going to have a 3 here and a 3 here. And because these are all positive, I know I'm going to have a plus here and a plus here. So being able to spot these makes factoring trinomials much easier. Let's try another one. Is this one a perfect square trinomial? Well, let's look. Is this first term a perfect square? Yes, t times t is t squared, so that's perfect square. Is 100 a perfect square? Well, yes it is. 10 times 10 is 100, so it's a perfect square. But if I multiply one of my factors from here and here together, to get this term, I should be able to multiply that times 2. So that's not the case here. I've got a negative 10t. That's not the same thing as 20t. So that is not a perfect square trinomial. All right, let's look at this one. 81b squared minus 90bw plus 25w squared. I'm going to look at my first and last terms and see if they are perfect squares. So 81v squared, yep, that's a perfect square. 9v times 9v is 81v squared. Is this one a perfect square? Yep, if I do 5w times 5w, I get 25w squared. Now I've got to multiply these together. So 9v times 5w would be 45bw. And then I've got to multiply that times 2. And that should equal this term, and it does, okay? Now, as we talked about before, when you're factoring these, you've got to really watch these signs, okay? So I'm going to have 5w here. I'm going to have 5w here. And I know that this one has to have a minus in each of these because I have a minus right here. That's a negative. So let me just double check and go ahead and FOIL it and make sure it comes out the same. So 9v times 9v, 81v squared. My outer ones, I get negative 45bw. My inner ones, negative 45bw. And my last ones, 25w squared. If I combine my like terms, that does come out correct. So this is my correct factorization of my trinomial. Make sure you watch it again if you need to and bring your questions for tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.